Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I am your host, Jon Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF, and I am once again joined for another weekly preview episode by the great Kate Magdziuk. Kate, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm ready for some Thursday night football. We're going to see some booty spanked, some Bronco booty spanked, probably. But you know what? Like Thursday night football, it's magical. You never know what's going to happen. So I don't know, maybe we'll be in for some surprises, but like this is going to be an interesting week. Lots of injuries that have decimated our fantasy football team. So we're kind of in like scrappy mode of the season, and we're here to help y'all through it.
Yeah, scrappy mode is a good way to describe it. I think like we did the waiver wire episode this week, and I think it was like our biggest list of players so far, just because, like you said, the injuries and some changes and stuff like that too. But the injuries have been brutal, obviously. But yeah, we're going to go through it. I mean, just two teams on a bye this week, the Packers and Kate, your Steelers as well, getting a much deserved bye week after picking up the win against the Ravens last week somehow. But it's going to be nice for you to not at least have to talk about them this week and the Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren situation. So you got to be feeling pretty good about that. You've earned a break from them.
I needed that. I'm sick of talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point, sick of Matt Canada, sick of all that. So I get a break and we could talk about like some more interesting teams here, which it might have a little bit more fantasy impact than these Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, it's funny. I was watching the Penguins game. There was a hockey game on I think it was Wednesday night, and the fans were chanting "Fire Canada" during the hockey game, which is just amazing.
It's just like at this point it's awkward. Honestly, it's uncomfortable. I honestly feel for Matt Canada, because that knowing that you are like the most hated man in a team's fan base right now that's got to be a big weight on his shoulders. So hopefully he's finding some suitable ways to unwind during this bye week, because I feel like he's probably earned it. But honestly, he probably shouldn't relax on this bye week, because we need him to pick up the pace.
Yeah. I would imagine that there needs to be a pretty big turnaround there for him to kind of stick with the team at this point long term. But we'll see what happens. It's not impossible, that's for sure. They have the talent. So but anyways, back to week 6. I'm looking forward to getting into it here. We're going to go game by game again. We're going to hit on the key players, matchups, all that stuff. I'll add the timestamps in there as well in the episode description. So again, people can bounce around and find the games they're looking for. But yeah, before we get into it, other than that, we will do a quick shout out here from our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist, and the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can go back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy. meetfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, let's start it off here with the Thursday night football game, as we always do. It is an AFC West showdown between the Denver Broncos, the Kansas City Chiefs. Anyone's game, really. Probably a pick 'em in the sports books, right? Oh, no, never mind. Kansas City, 11-point favorites because the Broncos defense is abysmal, and now they face Patrick Mahomes. So, Kate, where do you want to start with this one?
Honestly, I think we kind of know what's up with the Kansas City Chiefs, right? You play Patrick Mahomes, you play Travis Kelce, who is expected to play, though he is formally listed as questionable with that ankle injury. You're playing those two. I think you can pick one of these wide receivers. Like we said, every single week, it feels like, Rashee Rice is the guy, but you've also had some heavy involvement from Justin Watson. This is a defense that is going to provide enough fruitful opportunity for, all of the receiving options plus the running backs Didn't even get to the running backs here. I've got Isaiah Pacheco ranked as my overall RB7 on the week.
Thanks.
Against this Broncos defense. I think that this is a very interesting spot. I think, not looking forward to seeing what results on the other side of the ball, though.
Yeah, no, the other side is not as exciting, that's for sure. I don't think there's as much potential with Denver's offense. But yeah, for those that maybe aren't aware of the Denver defense, for example, they've allowed the third most passing yards this season. They've allowed the most rushing yards against so far this season, tied for the third most rushing touchdowns against, 13 passing touchdowns allowed, also the most in the league. So yeah, this defense is not good. And I'm with you, Kate. I think you start all those players, Mahomes, Pacheco, Kelsey. And yeah, I'm still in the Rashee Rice dart throw. We talked about him last week and for deeper leagues. It was his best week of the season, I think, wide receiver 23 or so. So yeah, I think you could probably plug him in there, even though, again, the routes aren't there. Target rate is there. It's a weird situation. But yeah, on the Broncos side, Javonte Williams is expected to be back, but any interest in him this week? Because Samaje Perine is still there. Jaleel McLaughlin has been good in his absence, right? He's averaging 7.2 yards per carry. The other two, Perine and Javonte Williams, are below 4 or 3.6 or lower. So I don't know. I think Javonte is probably the top one to trust, but like, I don't know. He's like maybe RB3 range at best for me at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this team. I think that, largely speaking, we're probably going to need to expect that at least in this first game returning for Javonte Williams, especially in a short week, that we might just see a total hodgepodge of, running back usage. It might be all over the place. And, to date this point, the Chiefs have allowed the 27th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs, actually been kind of solid. And you know what? Like, teams can't often afford the luxury to run on the Kansas City Chiefs because the offense, even when it's not firing on all cylinders, like I think we've kind of experienced to this point this season, they still score plenty of points. So, even if this rushing offense can find some room against the Chiefs, I just don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball enough. Just given game script, I'm kind of out on this backfield in week 6.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I don't think you have to start any of these guys, especially Javonte Williams. It's not a great matchup, but how about for Russell Wilson and the passing offense here? Russ has finished back-to-back top 10 QB finishes for the weeks. And I don't know, this seems like another one of those ones where it maybe not the best matchup for the Denver passing offense either, right? The wide receivers just haven't really gotten it done this season. The Chiefs have some strong coverage players as well in Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed that they have to contend with. So any interest in the Denver passing offense for this game?
No, I'm literally just kind of out on this entire offense in general. My biggest point of curiosity, and this isn't necessarily a matchup point, but it could be a opportunity to feature Jerry Jeudy. There have been flurries of reports all throughout the day here today. We're recording on Thursday regarding the potential of a trade of Jerry Jeudy to a team in need of a wide receiver ahead of the NFL trade deadline. As these rumors start to heat up, I do wonder if maybe they make it a point of emphasis to show off this shiny toy. Total speculation, I don't know, but I think there probably will be a little bit of garbage time here, maybe. Right. But again, this is I think a generally like a pretty tough defense that I think is a little bit underrated, and you might not get all that you want even in garbage time. So I'm kind of I'd rather look elsewhere.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's an interesting point for sure. There's always that potential, especially before a player gets traded. They do tend to showcase some of these guys. So maybe I know Jerry Jeudy playing out of the slot a little bit more too. So Trent McDuffie's been really good out of the slot for Kansas City. And if he doesn't end up playing there and L'Jarius Sneed comes in, even though they haven't deployed them that way this year, but they did last year, it's tough matchups for Jeudy basically. But if the targets are there, that could definitely help his fantasy potential as well this week. All right, let's go to the Baltimore Ravens and the Tennessee Titans. And where is this game being played, Kate?
London. Did I get it right?
Nailed
I
it.
know
Nailed
that
it.
the people want me to work on my accent. Let me know how it came out this week, because I know it's not been a pretty road to get here, but I appreciate y'all in the support here for my British accent.
Yeah, you nailed it. It was spot on. I'm sure our English listeners are going to appreciate that. But yeah, for this game, I guess we'll start with the Ravens here. Maybe the running backs, because do you have a preference for either of these guys? I mean, last game we did see Gus Edwards get more carries, right? But it was Justice Hill who delivered the touchdown, and then Hill's been getting the majority of passing down work and the goal line work, but Edwards getting the majority of those early down carries as well. So I'm curious, yeah, where you lean as far as who to trust in this Baltimore backfield if you had to pick somebody.
I had to pick somebody, it'd be Justice Hill.
Yeah.
Again, you kind of alluded to it. Gus Edwards has outrushed Justice Hill this year. He's being utilized more in that early down role, like you said. 56 carries to Justice Hill's 29, but Justice Hill is leading this team in red zone carries at the running back position, 10 so far in the year. Those have yielded 3 total touchdowns, 3 carries inside the 5. Those are the touches that matter, right? And getting those few targets from Lamar Jackson, which they're sparing at the running back position, but I do think that Hill is getting the most valuable touches that you can have so far this season without J.K. Dobbins in that mix.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do tend to lean Hill as well. Just like you said, those high value touches are kind of the key there for this offense. So, yeah, just not overly excited about them. Again, we've talked about the Tennessee run defense as well and how they're a bit of a tougher matchup for the running backs. So it's not players that you're targeting necessarily, but if you have to start them, yeah, we tend to prefer Justice Hill. Anything else for this Ravens offense that you'd want to talk about?
I think you can fire up. I think Zay Flowers seems to be the top target for Lamar Jackson at the wide receiver position. I'm fine firing him up. Matchup against the Titans, 8th in fantasy points to the wide receiver position allowed so far this season. Could have had a much bigger day if it weren't for a couple of drops in week 5. I think that this is just this is a fine matchup. I think the matchup is more conducive to the passing game. So I'm good firing up Zay Flowers. That's kind of it though.
Yeah, I think Say Flower, he's just kind of the clear wide receiver one, right? For Baltimore. I'm not as interested in the other guys, Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman. But Flowers has been awesome. Other than those drops, obviously last week, but he's even seeing like a slightly higher target rate than Mark Andrews so far this season, which is kind of nice. But yeah, like you said, the Titans, they're giving up the passing yards as well, 8th most passing yards in the league, as well as 8th most points to fantasy wide receivers. So you like that for Baltimore's Zay Flowers. On the Titans side of things, Derrick Henry has been kind of up and down so far this year, right? Like Tajay Spears continues to be heavily involved. He's mostly receiving down work, but he's getting carries now as well, right? And the Ravens, not a great matchup for running backs in the first place. So they rank top 10 in rushing yards allowed. They still haven't allowed a rushing touchdown this season. So how do you feel about Derrick Henry or Tajay Spears this week? Do you feel like you can start these guys and trust them?
I mean, I think you start Derrick Henry just based on the fact that he's Derrick Henry,
Right.
and he is seeing the bulk of the touches in this offense. That, I think generally speaking, if Derrick Henry's on the Tennessee Titans, he's going to be their lead back. Like there's no question about that. But he has been generally outplayed by Tajay Spears in terms of efficiency, kind of across the board. Being outplayed in terms of yards before contact, yards after contact per attempt, missed forced tackle rate, yards per attempt, like across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Tajay Spears is outplaying Henry. And I think that this is just kind of one of those moments where you note that maybe this is that moment we've been fearing. 1,972 career touches to this point, ranks 2nd among active running backs. We might just be seeing some of that declining efficiency, but even like Derrick Henry at his worst is better than most at their best. So like I'm still firing up Henry just for that upside, but still not looking to get Tajay Spears involved until we actually see a significant uptick in touches. He's taken on a fair bit of the offensive snaps, but he's not necessarily touching the ball when he's getting those snaps. So I think that's sort of the key differentiator there for me.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good breakdown for sure. How about DeAndre Hopkins? Because I don't think we're interested in the rest of the Tennessee passing offense, right? But again, Ravens, they're good defense. They've been a man-heavy defense. They've been good at playing man coverage. The good thing for Hopkins, I guess, is the target rate, right? Especially when facing man coverage, a 36% target rate against man this season. So it's hard to sit him because I guess he's that clear number one target in that offense by a mile, really. But that Baltimore being just kind of a stingy defense this week, I think makes it a little bit more difficult to pass against than usual for Hopkins and company. But yeah, you're probably starting DeAndre Hopkins this week, right?
Yeah, and I do think you're probably tempering expectations. Baltimore has a league high coverage grade per PFF. Still looking for his first touchdown. Obviously had that breakout game against the Colts last week, 140 receiving yards, but that was a great matchup for wide receivers, and I definitely don't think this matchup is nearly as favorable. So I think, you're kind of starting him as a volume play with some potential upside, but I'm expecting a performance somewhere in the wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 3 range from Hopkins this week.
Nice. Yeah, that's fair for sure. Anything else in this game that you want to talk about, or should we go on to our commanders here?
Let's keep riding. Let's talk about Sam Howell.
Yeah. Oh man, he gave us a scare in the first half last week. I'm not gonna lie, I was sweating. But because that first half was ugly, but then goes in the second half, totally redeems himself, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns, I believe it was. It finishes as QB6 on the week. But yeah, that first half definitely had me sweating because we were really high on him on last week's preview pod. I started him in a ton of places. I was thinking maybe I was high for being so high on him, but that's why you play the full 60 minutes, because he bailed us out in the end. So how do you feel about Sam Howell going against the Falcons off our defense this week?
To be honest, I actually think this Falcons defense a lot probably tougher than anybody's giving them credit for. So it's not an ideal matchup, but I do think that, this is also a tough matchup against the run. I think they're going to be in a position where, much like last week in week 5, that, having that opportunity and being forced to pass the ball a lot really played into, Sam Howell's favor in terms of garbage time, just trying to play catch up. And I think that can be a similar game script that we see this week, just based on necessity, based on the fact that the Falcons, not necessarily a pushover secondary anymore, ranks 17th in fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position, just not giving up a ton. And I think that this is, not a shutdown defense. It's not a scary defense, but generally speaking, if I have other options over Sam Howell, I'll lean their way. This is one of 5 defenses this year that have yet to allow over 1,000 passing yards through 5 games this year. Just not in love with that matchup, so I'll probably look towards other options. But you're very excited about some of that garbage time you saw in week 5 for sure.
Yeah, no, I think we're in the exact same mindset here because, like you mentioned, the Falcons defense has been much improved. They're allowing just 6.2 passing yards per attempt, which is 6th best in the league. I guess the good thing for Howell is, if you do want to stream him, is this Atlanta pass rush is among the bottom in the league, which should help a quarterback who has taken 29 sacks and has the highest pressure to sack conversion rate in the league. So yeah, it's not like I hate the matchup for Howell, like you said, but he's not really back in that must start, easy stream range for me this week, just because of what that Falcons coverage unit has been so far this year. But it does kind of keep me from being too excited about Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, even Curtis Samuel, who's been effective out of the slot. But D. Alford, the Falcons slot corner there, he's earned an 83.1 coverage grade this year, which ranks 6th best among corners. He's been really solid as well. So Yeah, not the best matchup, but like you said, there could be potential volume there for at least for Howell. And we'll see which one of these wide receivers kind of benefits this week.
Yeah, or maybe the tight end position. We've got Logan
Right,
Thomas,
Logan
who
Thomas, yeah.
checking out like his rostership percentage on ESPN and Yahoo Fantasy. He's available in most leagues. He's tied for the 12th most routes run among tight ends, despite missing a week. Howell's tied for the 4th most targets per game to the tight end position. Tight end 7 in fantasy points per game. Like, I'd light up your Logan Thomases, I think,
Yeah.
and see what happens. At least 40 receiving yards or a touchdown in each game he's played so far this season. Relatively safe floor for what's otherwise kind of been a volatile pass attack.
Yeah, that's a great call. We talked about Logan Thomas on the waiver wire show as well, and you're right. This has been a nice fit for him. He's been involved in the offense. Hopefully, he can continue to stay healthy because yeah, he's been like a favorite target of Sam Howell as well. So that's nice to see. Speaking of tight ends, on the Atlanta side,
Don't say
Kyle
it.
Pitts. Yeah,
No.
we have to talk about him again because he continues to be just like the bizarro tight end of the NFL. It's season high in targets this past week, but his second fewest route runs on the year. So go figure there. I mean, me personally, I'm just not trusting it. It was a good week last week, but until we see more consistency from him, I cannot put him in lineups. I don't know how you feel about him after last week.
Yeah, I think what we're still seeing is that Kyle Pitts might just not be healthy. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Had Arthur Smith come out and say, like, well, he's getting closer to 100%,
Right.
which reading between the lines, that just is an admittance that he's not fully healthy. Has just 3 more targets than Johnny Smith over the season. They're both averaging just like right around 11.5 yards per reception. But Johnny Smith is outpacing Kyle Pitts across the board in pretty much any metric that might, indicate there's some explosion there. Yards after the catch per reception, yards per route run, missed forced tackles after the catch. Like across the board, Smith has been the better player there. So I think given that split in terms of target opportunity, the lack of explosion after the catch from Pitts, but all of that you're fading. But I also don't think this is a great matchup. The Commanders have been sort of a more challenging matchup against fantasy tight ends. Still are have allowed just a single receiving touchdown to a tight end so far this year. That was Cole Kmet, but even then held to 42 receiving yards and a score. Like you're not going to be angry if you sit him in those circumstances. So I think just generally out on Pitts, I'm not swayed by the week 5.
Yeah, we just got to see it a few more times, string a couple good games together, and then maybe we could trust them again. But yeah, like you said, there's definitely seems to be some health concerns there. I know there were videos and stuff floating around of his routes and stuff last week. So yeah, not ideal for Kyle Pitts. Anybody else on Atlanta that you'd want to talk about here? I mean, obviously we know Bijan Robinson we're starting, but Desmond Ridder coming off a QB8 performance last week,
Yeah,
he could definitely. Yeah, you could definitely pass against like the Washington defense, but I don't know. This is not a player that I'm trusting really either. We've just seen him be ineffective too many times already this season.
Yeah, not really trusting, Desmond Ridder himself as a passer. I do think this is kind of an interesting spot, like for Drake London. I don't love the inconsistencies that this passing attack has had by any stretch of the imagination, but Washington has actually been like hemorrhaging fantasy points to wide receivers, and this has been kind of a weekly occurrence, right? And I think that there could be some opportunity here because top wide receivers have absolutely gone off against this defense. So maybe it's just like it's just hard to trust this overall pass attack. But I kind of like Drake London to have a boomer bust week again this week, as always. But
right, yeah,
maybe even more so, the ceiling might be a little higher than usual this week against the Commanders defense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, like you said, this isn't like a defense that really necessarily scares you as far as like what you can do to them through the air. So there's potential, at least for Drake London. We know he's got the talent. It's just a matter of Desmond Ridder getting him the ball. So Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. Let's see. Where do we want to start with this one?
Maybe
Minnesota?
that, maybe that big man wide receiver, Mr. All Pro, headed to IR, which just basically opens
I
up this
know.
entire passing offense or slams it shut, depending on how you're looking at things. No Justin Jefferson for at least the next 4 weeks. Obviously, like that has huge ripple effects throughout the entire offense. Just his sheer presence on the field opens up the passing game. So what does this do for Kirk Cousins? How much are you trusting Jordan Addison to be ready to step into a wide receiver one role?
So I think this is a decent opportunity for Addison, right? Like if there was a game for him to kind of have to step up, this is a good, like, favorable matchup for him to do it against Chicago. Again, like this is not a great defense. No team has allowed more passing yards against than the Chicago Bears this year. They've also allowed 12 passing touchdowns, which is the second most. Their defensive line among the worst in the league in pass rush grade. They rank 31st in that regard. Kirk Cousins been a top 10 quarterback from a clean pocket this season. He's also got the third most passing yards from a clean pocket. So everything kind of points to this being a good matchup for the combination of Kirk Cousins and even Jordan Addison this week. So I kind of like it. I'm putting Kirk Cousins in. I'm putting Jordan Addison in. It's a bummer that we don't have Justin Jefferson to kind of fall back on for this offense, but I think they can get it done against this Bears defense because this Bears defense is what they are this season.
Yeah, this is a great sort of like dip your toes in the water
Yeah.
moment for Jordan Addison as a top receiving option. Obviously, you're starting TJ Hawkinson. He's probably going to see more targets than ever in this
Mhm.
matchup. But Jordan Addison, even to this point, has been a relatively safe fantasy asset, even with Justin Jefferson on the field to kind of function as that wide receiver one. 50 plus receiving yards in 4 or 5 games this season. He's had a touchdown in 3. Does that continue when he's sort of the top focus of opposing coverage? I think it could, because I think Jordan Addison just has that kind of skill set where he is built to move and be a top receiving option, even though he lacks size. So I'm not too scared there. I'm starting Kirk Cousins. On the other side of the ball, you're starting Justin Fields, you're starting DJ Moore, this has been like the best QB wide receiver duo over the past 2 weeks, and it's not even a question.
It's crazy, right? Like Fields, QB2 2 weeks ago, QB1 last week. Look, I know he did it against Denver and Washington, but still 4 passing touchdowns in each game. And we've yet to really see that big, like, rushing upside from him, even though he ran the ball, I think, like 10 times last week for 57 yards. But people were writing him off after the first 3 weeks. I mean, nothing about Minnesota's pass defense really scares you from starting Fields or more. So I'm happy to fire them up again. I mean, how could you bench them at this point, right? They've been so good over these last 2 weeks. So hopefully that momentum keeps going.
Yeah, I think this will be a good spot for that. How about in the running game? Because, obviously we had Khalil Herbert go down with an ankle injury. Then you have Roschon Johnson, who suffered a concussion. There, you had Travis Homer hamstring. Like, the running back room here in the Chicago Bears offense is it's hurting. So Roschon Johnson didn't practice Wednesday. His progression through the protocol is going to be critical. So we're probably going to know here pretty quickly if he's going to play. If he's not practicing again on Thursday, I think that's probably a sign that he's probably going to be out, which could put D'Onta Foreman in position to once again be an unsung hero, come out of the darkness and perform for fantasy. Because I don't think this is a terrible matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. You could find worse, and maybe we'll potentially get a little bit of volume out of D'Onta Foreman.
Yeah. I think I'm probably more hopeful for Roschon Johnson. Like, if he plays, like, they've had a longer week to help him recover from a concussion, obviously playing on Thursday last week. So I like Roschon Johnson. I think he's been effective, 4.9 yards per carry this season. Minnesota, I know the defense as a whole is not overly scary, but allowing just 3.5 yards per carry in the league this year. So they're 5th best in that regard. So I think the nice thing about Roshan Johnson, and maybe Deontay Foreman can get this role if Johnson's not out there too, is that Johnson could get work as a passing down back, which is kind of nice to pair with that uptick in rushing volume with Khalil Herbert out as well. So I guess there's the opportunity there for Deontay Foreman as well, but probably there'd be like high end, maybe RB3 type for me this week if they did play. So most likely starting them like in a flex spot, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's God, it's so hard. Like I want to play Roshan Johnson really.
Well, if let's say Roshan Johnson is out, does that change your? Because my whole thing, speculating for Deontay Foreman is under the assumption, like I do not play Roshan Johnson or do not play. Sorry, Deontay Foreman if Roshan is active. I don't think you can do that. But if he's out and Deontay Foreman stands to see 70+% of the rush attempts here, does that change your mind just from a volume standpoint?
Yeah. I think if we knew that there wasn't going to be like one of these other backs kind of mixed in there, that definitely helps a little bit. I still don't love the matchup, so it would be more of like a flex play for me this week. That's the way I'm kind of leaning, but yeah, I want to put somebody in there, especially because Khalil Herbert's out and there is that potential for a little bit more volume. So most likely going to be starting them in a few places. That's for sure.
All right.
Some
You're
I'll
not going to be excited about it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be excited.
Not going to be excited, but yeah, I got so many leagues that I'll play them in some and then bench them in others just to kind of hedge my bets a little bit, but there's potential there.
Yep, for sure.
All right, let's do a quick ad break here. And this one is from Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players. If they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Kate, last week we had Sam Howell over 1.5 passing touchdowns. We had DJ Moore over 3.5 receptions. We hit on both of them. This week, I found a couple that we might like. Bijan Robinson over 24.5 receiving yards, 24.5 receiving yards. My God, mixing a water, bud. And he's gone over that all but one game so far this year. And then Kirk Cousins over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's hit the over every game this year. How do you feel about those two for this week?
I'm feeling good. I think we're going to keep this strong streak going.
Nice.
And maybe I'll bring a couple to the table for next week. I'm excited.
It. All right, let's go. Yeah, we got to keep the undefeated streak going here for Prize Picks. Prize Picks, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. Go to prizepicks.com/fantasy and use code fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/fantasy and use code fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's go on to the Cincinnati Bengals and the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle, I don't know. They're pretty much a pretty straightforward team, I feel like, right? We're starting DK Metcalf. We're starting Kenneth Walker. Might be a tougher matchup for Tyler Lockett because this isn't like must-start territory as for me, at least, because the Bengals' pass defense has been pretty good. But other than that, I don't know if there's much to figure out here for the Seahawks offense. Anything stand out to you?
No, this is like, probably one of the few offenses I feel like we kind of have figured out. Like, Jackson Smith and Jigba, not a figure to this point. He should not be on your redraft rosters at this point, based on his current involvement. DK Metcalf, obviously the top option. Yeah, there's not a lot of question marks here, which is kind of refreshing for once to not have that weight on our shoulders.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Seattle, for having your ish together. That's very nice of you. How about on the Bengals side? So Joe Burrow last week, coming off the best game of of the year for him, QB6. Are you trusting him this week, or are you still concerned that potential to kind of fall off is still there? Because we got a large sample size now of him also struggling this year, right?
Yeah, I'm not loving Joe Burrow this week, but again, now after fading him so hard in week 5, I'm like scared to dip my toe in that water. So I think like we have an interesting spot for Joe Burrow in terms of, do you need upside? Then yeah, maybe go with Joe Burrow. Probably some safer options out there, but probably not as many with as high of a ceiling as Burrow as a passer. The biggest question, like obviously you're starting Jamar Chase. If T Higgins is active, can you play him? Because he's finished as a top 80 wide receiver in just one of 4 games this year. Top 80.
Yeah.
80.
It's been a brutal start for T Higgins. And honestly, like, I'm worried about the rib injury thing. Like, if they do play him, how effective is he going to be? Like, I'm looking for any reason not to play T Higgins basically this week. And if that means that I have to look at Joe Burrow and come up with reasons to fade him because for the same reason, then that's the case for me too. Like, I'm definitely starting Jamar Chase, obviously, but T Higgins is the one, and even Joe Burrow. And look, I do want to see it one more time this year from Joe Burrow before trusting him, right? I do think he looked better last week, but Bengals O-line hasn't really helped him out too much. They're 25th in pass blocking grade. The Seattle defensive line has the 7th best quick pressure rate in the league. The defensive line has generated the 4th most sacks in the league, despite being on a bye week last week. And Burrow, I don't know. I mean, I'm not scared of the Seattle defense, so you can play these two guys, Burrow and Higgins, if you want. But I think depending on who your other options are, like you said, at quarterback, maybe some safer options. Like I like maybe Kirk Cousins versus Chicago, Matthew Stafford against Arizona, maybe Goff versus Tampa Bay. We'll talk about in a little bit. I kind of prefer those guys, at least for one more week, because I love Joe Burrow, but I just don't love what we've seen from him so far this year, as much as the most recent sample was at least encouraging. So for that reason, I'm probably waiting on Burrow for one more week, and the same thing with T Higgins.
Right. I'm glad I'm not alone here on this island, because I felt awful lonely after fading Burrow in week 5, but that's all right. We move onward and upward.
Everything was there to fade Joe Burrow after the start to the year that he had. So I don't blame you. It was a pretty miraculous turnaround, I would say, to finish as QB6 after how poor he was and how bad this offense was going into that week. So it happens for sure, but we definitely move on and upward, like you say. So let's go on to the San Francisco 49ers and the Cleveland Browns. Man, this is like another one of those big battle of the defenses, basically, for San Francisco this week. They played Dallas last week, and they handled them easily. I don't really have any concerns that they'll be able to beat the Browns this week, but as Browns defense maybe makes things difficult for Purdy and company. We talked last week about Ayuk and success that he had against man coverage, but facing off against one of those top man coverage teams in the league last week against Dallas, they actually held him to a quieter game, even though there was a blowout. They didn't play the full game. He was just wide receiver 36 in PPR last week. So now gets another great man coverage defense in Cleveland. So might be tempering expectations a little bit here for Ayuk again. Debo as well. I mentioned Kittle last week. I was probably starting him, but not excited about it. And then definitely wrong to not be excited about him with those 3 touchdowns. So even though I don't love the matchup for him again, I'm not fading him this week. Not after that bit me in the ass last week. So you had Joe Burrow. I had George Kittle. So don't worry.
The 49ers, like you saw up against this Dallas Cowboys defense, really kind of minimized, all of the effectiveness that the Cowboys seem to have previously against some easier matchups. But I think you should still expect some hard played defense from this Cleveland Browns unit. Been excellent in coverage, been excellent against the run. Like, that's just been one of the league's best defenses to this point. So I think you're starting them, but maybe tempering a little bit expectations in terms of efficiency. But on the Cleveland Browns side of the ball, let's talk about Deshaun Watson. Still not practicing with a what they're calling a rotator cuff contusion. Kind of weird situations going on in the Cleveland Browns universe. I'm fading everybody in this offense. No Jerome Ford, Amari Cooper if you have to, but outside of that, no thank you.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, thank you is a good way to put it. Because who knows if Deshaun Watson's going to play? I don't know what is going on there. You would think that after the bye week, maybe he was feeling a little bit better. I know they cleared him for week 4, right, or something like that, but he wasn't feeling comfortable enough to go. like
That's
you
what's
said, really
so
weird.
bizarre. It's
Yeah.
and they're being very quiet about it. So I don't know. I don't it doesn't seem likely that he's going to play. Um, which, being without like, your starting quarterback up against one of the league's best defenses, not a good situation for production, any sense of the word. So Cleveland Browns are a no from me, dog.
Yeah, yeah, that dog pound. Yeah, the Dorian Thompson Robinson, as good as he looked in the preseason, it was just not very encouraging the week that he filled in for Deshaun Watson. So can't imagine it's going to look that much better against the 49ers. And like you said, Jerome Ford, even I hate the matchup for Jerome Ford this week. And that Browns offensive line just has not been as good at run blocking this year that they were last year. So really weird stuff to see them kind of decline the way they have. So moving on from the Browns, I think. Let's go on to the New Orleans Saints and the Houston Texans. And where do you want to start? Chris Olave, how about that? He's not had like the best start to the year, so I like what your note is here. So how do you feel about Chris Olave?
More like no lave. Thanks
Nice,
for teeing
nice.
me up
Yeah,
there,
high
John.
five.
Yeah, I had to drop that in our show doc. I appreciate you teeing me up. Yeah, no thank you for Chris Olave. I'm just politely declining on the Brown. I'm very politely declining a lot of these matchups this week. No thank you. Chris Olave like had the touchdown to save his week last week, but generally speaking, after a relatively solid start to the season, with 80 or more receiving yards in each of the first 3 weeks, like just had a couple of down weeks, just 16 total receiving yards over the last 2 weeks. You don't love that. And I hate this matchup. I don't think this is a good matchup going against this Houston Texans secondary that I think just is playing well. I don't want to target this matchup whatsoever.
Yeah, no, they have played well. They're one of the top team coverage grades so far for us this year. The Texans are, and yeah, like I like Olave as a player. I think there's maybe potential for volume there if this becomes a pass heavy game, because the Texans have been a pretty pass heavy offense themselves. So potentially trying to keep up with them. There's maybe that volume there for Olave. So I'm starting him, but again, you're not targeting him in DFS or anything like that necessarily. But yet it's been kind of a quieter start, like you said, just the one touchdown, but
And
yeah,
like the
maybe things.
opportunity has been great. It leads the
Yeah.
league in targets of 20 plus air yards, ranks 14th among wide receivers in team target share, second most targeted air yards among wide receivers this year. Like he's had the opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
just to be clear. And I think that all of that will come to fruition. Just don't love it up against this Texan secondary.
Yeah, yeah. We want to see him become Chris Yeslave. More than that doesn't really work as well.
Yaslave.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of what nationality he would be. Chris Yaslave. I don't know,
Yeslave.
sounds like
Yeah,
Eastern European, maybe.
yeah,
Something like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think that sounds about right.
I love it. Okay. Noted.
All right. Anybody else from the Saints? Any interest in the rest of these players? Because I'm not as interested in Derek Carr or Michael Thomas all that much. I'm fine starting Kamara, but the rest is not a great matchup.
Yeah. No, thank you.
How about for the Texans then? Let's go and look at again, not a great matchup for the Texans passing offense because the Saints defense has been a really strong coverage unit. Potentially no Tank Dell either. He's dealing with a concussion. Stroud has been a pretty good streaming option this season, but again, we don't love the matchup. The Saints have deployed the second highest rate of man coverage so far this season. And then while in man, they've allowed just 4.05 yards per coverage snap and 4.7 yards per coverage target, both of which rank among the top two in the league. So that part of it, I don't love. How do you feel about the Texans passing offense? Is there anybody that you do like for this week?
I think you can deploy Nico Collins as like a high volume play potentially. You said it though, the Saints defense allowing the second lowest completion rate in the league at 57.5%. Just one of five defenses that have forced more interceptions than they have allowed touchdowns. Like this is not a good matchup. Even if Stroud maintains his record of most passes without an interception by a rookie, like I still think we need to temper expectations in general. So really the only guy I'm comfortable targeting here is Collins. And again, that's for the volume, not necessarily for the fact that I think he's going to have a bunch of chunk plays or an efficient day.
Right. Yeah. And I'm with you. I like Nico Collins. Again, I mentioned the man coverage for the Saints, and Collins has been one of the best wide receivers in the league versus man coverage. So I'm fine starting him. He's got the fourth most fantasy points per route run against man. He's earned the third highest receiving grade in the league against man coverage. He's wide receiver PPR in PPR wide receiver 11 on the year, but I'd probably expect maybe more like low end wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3 type of range. Like you said, just more based on volume than the opportunity to blow up this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Anybody else on Houston?
No,
fair.
no.
All right.
Again, this is going to be one of those matchups that I think is going to be a little bit of a defensive struggle, and one that, much like the 49ers versus the Browns, I don't think that targeting, specifically targeting this matchup for fantasy is going to be very conducive to you winning your week in week 6.
Right. I like it. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then, yeah, I mean, Dameon Pierce, the workload, the volume is there, but again, not the best matchup for running backs either. So, let's go to the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, man, reports of Zach Moss's demise greatly exaggerated, obviously, because he came in and dominated the touches last week with Jonathan Taylor in the lineup. I know that Shane Steichen has come out and said that they do expect to increase Jonathan Taylor's workload, but Zach Moss has been just so incredibly effective this year. It feels inevitable that we'll see Taylor take over at some point soon, but do you think that'll come this week?
I think just based on the fact that like this has not just been necessarily like a volume thing, although that's very much helped for Zach Moss, but he's actually shown the propensity for breaking off some runs, which you haven't really seen in years past. So I'm okay actually firing him up as a flex play this week against the Jaguars. Per source, Jim Irsay is considering renaming the team to the Indianapolis Mosses because of Zach Moss's success. So I think you could still fire him up in the flex play. I'm also fine, firing up Jonathan Taylor. I think we're probably going to see both of these guys finish somewhere in the RB2 range. But yeah, definitely expecting some more work from Jonathan Taylor here in week 6.
Yeah, I would imagine. And like I said in the recap show, it feels like they might have paid the wrong running back here after.
But love to see it.
Yeah, Zach Moss showing out. But yeah, I'm just looking at Nate's rankings right here as well, and he's got them as RB20 and RB21 in the rankings in favor of Zach Moss right now. So just super close. I think Zach Moss has been good enough to earn that spot as well. So other things in this game for the Colts, we got Gardner Minshew back there. Anthony Richardson obviously is on IR, but Minshew revenge game here against Jacksonville, so maybe that does something. But how about Josh Downs? Because he's coming off a really nice week, seeing a near 20% target rate this season. I think he was wide receiver 18 in PPR last week. So again, really strong. Minshew seems to like him. He's manning that slot role. Trey Herndon, who is the Jags' top slot corner, just a 67.1 coverage grade. He's allowed 224 yards and 2 touchdowns in his coverage so far this season. So another potential favorable matchup for Josh Downs. Would you think about starting him this week?
Yes, I actually wrote about him in an article coming out tomorrow for PFF. Nice. For like in case of emergency flex plays. And I think this is a great spot. You named it. Trey Herndon, the slot corner for the Jaguars, has just been unreliable to this point in coverage. And, from a standpoint of looking at Minshew as the starting quarterback, Josh Downs has seen the second most targets from Minshew, only behind Michael Pittman. Mm-hmm. When Anthony Richardson's been in the game, he's been targeting the tight end at a much higher rate. So Minshew been a little bit more favorable to these wide receivers. I think this is a fine play. And yeah, I'm good firing up Josh Downs, and I'm not looking back.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, let's get the rookie involved a little bit more. He's shown some promising stuff, so that's been cool to see. How about on the Jacksonville side? Last week we were debating, was it Calvin Ridley or Calvin Midley? He performed well. He's no longer Calvin Midley. He was wide receiver 9 in PPR last week, so it was nice to see him deliver after we called him out. He was able to take advantage. No Tre'Davious White for Buffalo. We know about this Colts coverage unit, second most passing yards allowed. So that's really just a nice matchup for Jacksonville's wide receivers all around. Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, if he plays, I don't know if he will, but yeah, anybody else on Jacksonville?
No, I think you fire up your Ridleys. I think you fire up your Christian Kirks. This, just coverage unit in general, been favorable to giving up some big days to fantasy wide receivers. I think that'll favor Calvin Ridley this week. Have him as my overall wide receiver 12. So expecting another solid week from him. But yeah, you're obviously playing your Travis Etienne's, and I think that's kind of where you sit with this one.
Yeah. Same. All right, let's go to the Carolina Panthers and the Miami Dolphins then.
You mean the Carolina Thielens?
Yes, they have been the Thielens for sure. He's been just unbelievable. Yeah, and maybe Carolina's still in the market for that wide receiver one, like we talked about last week, and maybe that's Jerry Jeudy, but man, Adam Thielen has been awesome. So you're starting him again, you're firing him up.
My wide receiver 11 on the week, actually. Adam Thielen ranked top 12 among wide receivers in targets, receptions, receiving yards, yards after the catch, and he's one of 18 wide receivers this year with 3 or more touchdowns. I think you fire him up. He is a weekly play, and this matchup doesn't scare me at all.
Yeah, he's been awesome. So you love to see that for Thielen. I'm with you. I would start him as well. The other thing for Carolina is the Chuba Hubbard takeover here in the backfield, slowly but surely. But he did outsnap Miles Sanders last week. I know Sanders dealing with a bit of a shoulder injury there, so potentially playing a part in his playing time. But we've talked about it. Chuba Hubbard has been more effective. He's been the better running back, and again, maybe it's because of injuries, but if we continue to see him outsnap Miles Sanders, I mean, this could be a nice role for Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah, I think Chuba Hubbard, he's a guy that I'm definitely keeping my eye on more long term. Don't love the matchup against the Dolphins. Have been kind of middle of the pack against fantasy running backs in terms of scoring allowed, but just not a ton of like big games here given up. And the Panthers, I do think again this is going to be a matchup where they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. So unless they get Chuba, heavily involved as a receiver, which I'm not sure if they will or not. Not loving this spot for him here. I think on the other side of the ball, though, boy, oh boy, does Raheem Mostert have a very high ceiling entering this game against a Carolina Panthers defense that cannot stop the run for nothing.
No, they're the Panthers defense. I don't know what's going. They really can't. I mean, the Dolphins too. Like this is one of the better running teams in the league. Well, Devin Achane and Raheem Mostert have been super efficient, which has helped. But the Dolphins offensive line has helped as well. They've generated 2.2 yards before contact per rush attempt, which is the second best mark in the league. Meanwhile, the Panthers have allowed 2.1 rushing yards before contact so far this season, which is the second worst in the league. So, look, if you're looking for somebody this week, if Raheem Mostert for whatever reason, is out there, this is a guy. He's mostly rostered, but with Devin Achane out, that this is wheels up for him because there's no really concerns about his potential workload. I wouldn't think. I know Chris Brooks is in there, Jeff Wilson, those guys potentially could play, but I'm not worried. I mean, when given at least a yard before contact this season, Mostert has earned a 91.6 rushing grade, which ranks as the third best mark among running backs. Achane is first. Mostert's also totaled 6 rushing touchdowns when given at least a yard before contact, which is tied for the most among running backs. He's got 8 explosive runs when given at least a yard before contact, tied for 6th most. And Carolina has allowed the most rushing touchdowns, or tied for the most rushing touchdowns against this season as well. So, like you said, the matchup is perfect for Raheem Mostert to have another one of those massive games.
Yeah, the Carolina Panthers, like you mentioned, just so leaky towards these running backs, have allowed 2+ rushing touchdowns to running backs in 4 of 5 games this season. So this is a big moment for some potential upside. Outside of that, I think you're just kind of starting the rest of your Dolphins as planned. But boy, oh boy, do I like Raheem Mostert as a very high upside option this week.
Yeah, that's the big one that stands out for me as well. All right, well, let's go to the New England Patriots at the Las Vegas Raiders. It is a Jimmy G and Jacoby Myers revenge
Woo!
game. So we like that. So how do you feel about these Raiders passing options this week against New England?
Kind of interesting. I love a good revenge game, so
Yeah.
sometimes I'll just feed into that. I think Jacoby Myers is actually kind of a decent option on a week to week
Mm-hmm.
basis, let alone a revenge game at home. Wide receiver 20 in fantasy, despite missing a week with a concussion in week 2. He's had 2 weeks as a top 12 fantasy wide receiver. I think that this is, I think he's kind of a weekly flex play until proven otherwise. Him and Jimmy G seem to have that connection, but especially loving the fact that this is a home game. They don't have to travel across the country. This Patriots defense and offense have just kind of looked like hot messes all around. So yeah, not really a position where I think you're looking to sit Jacoby Myers. Maybe I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Jimmy G just because he doesn't have that rushing upside. He's
Yeah.
I don't trust Jimmy G. Obviously has the propensity for turnovers. So not loving him as an option, but trusting him to get the ball delivered to Jacoby Myers across the middle a fair number of times.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been loving Jacoby Myers this season, and look, the Patriots, they've been destroyed the past 2 weeks. It's been tough to watch, but it's not like, I don't know, their defense isn't really like terrible when you dive into the metrics, as bad as the last 2 box scores have looked, right? Like they're a top 10 team in passing yards allowed per attempt and rushing yards allowed per attempt. But the problem, I think, is more the offense that has just not been able to get anything going. So it gives more opportunities for these opposing teams to have the ball as well, right? So still love that for, Jacoby Myers. He's been a stud. Devontae Adams have a potential bounce back game here after the, not delivering as much against Green Bay last week. And then Josh Jacobs has been delivering thanks to volume as well. So that's been nice to see. So those are pretty much the guys. It's Devontae, Jacoby Myers, Josh Jacobs in Las Vegas, but I'm with you. I'm not as interested in Jimmy G as much as I hope he does get a win in a revenge game here.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Anybody on New England you're interested in? It's a no
This
from
is like,
me, but
it's like a no thank you group here.
yeah,
Maybe outside Hunter Henry, because I think this is a decent matchup. I know he laid a goose egg on us last week, but
yes, he
against
did.
the Raiders safeties and linebackers, I think a potentially better matchup here for Hunter Henry. For those that have been starting him in the past, like myself, I'm okay going back to him for another week here and hoping that he can turn it around. And if not, then I mean, there's really nobody on this Patriots offense. Even Ramondre Stevenson, Ezekiel Elliott is a messy situation at this point.
Yeah. Again, no, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let's take another ad break here. This is the last one. We are brought to you today by Manscaped, who has taken a step up from Halloween to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring a compact design and next-gen skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave. Get the sweetest treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and use code PFF for 20% off plus free shipping. For wet or dry use, feel free to bring this anywhere and everywhere. The compact design and airplane friendliness makes this the perfect travel tool for on the go. And being able to shave up to 3 days growth without the mess of a wet shave is priceless. And for my Wolfman with a little more scruff, Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit has everything you need to tame your mane. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using code PFF for a look as sweet as candy. Get yourself the Handyman from Manscaped. All right, so let's go on to the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. So a huge bummer in Arizona because their star running back, and he has been a star this season, James Conner, now on injured reserve. So, Kate, How do you feel about this Arizona backfield at this point? Amari DeMarcado has been the hot waiver wire claim this coming into this week. You firing him up if you have the chance?
I'm going to be honest, I'm a little concerned about this backfield and the potential for splits. So, in addition to the breakout for DeMarcado, which came on the back of an absence from Keontae Ingram, who's been functioning as the team's backup, missed week 5 with a neck injury. Seems like he should be good to go for this game. The team issued an updated depth chart, listed Keontae Ingram as the second running back for whatever that's worth. Career high though, 9 rush attempts for 14 rushing yards and a touchdown. Not great, Keontae Ingram. DeMarcado's 74.6 PFF rushing grade in week 5 is literally better than any rushing grade that Keontae Ingram has ever had in his career so far. His career high 66.3 PFF rushing grade. I worry about this backfield a little bit more. I think if you want to start one, it's probably DeMarcado for me, but not really looking to start either, because I think this could be one of these things where you might get close to a 50-50 split, and that's going to just generally not be good for either of their production.
Yeah, you don't have the same level of excitement with this group as you do when James Conner is back there, obviously. And we had talked about this a couple weeks ago about that Arizona offensive line having, one of the worst run grades in run blocking, and James Conner basically fighting for his life and doing everything he can. He has that talent to be able to do it. We just don't know yet with DeMarcado and Keontae Ingram. So we'll see how it kind of plays out. But yeah, I'm not overly excited about firing them up this week, as much as it might be nice to have them coming off the waiver wire. You don't necessarily have to start them yet, because Connor will be out for at least 4 games. So you kind of hold there. Anybody else on Arizona though? No, yeah, we kind of know what they are. How about on the Rams? Because again, maybe another team we kind of know exactly what they are, right? Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. You could start these guys and feel pretty comfortable about it. Same thing with Matthew Stafford at this point too. And if you're looking for a matchup based play, this could be a good one. Kyren Williams too. He's been super solid. How do you feel about Kyren Williams this week against the Cardinals?
I think you fire him up. I think from all things considered, he's been, a nice volume play. So far, Arizona's giving up the 4th most fantasy points to opposing running backs, 200 plus yard performances over the last 3 weeks. So you like that. They've been perfectly susceptible to, giving up some yardage on the ground. So I think he's a fine play. I think, yeah, we kind of know what this offense is, right? You start your Pukas, your Cups, and your Kyrens, and hope for the best.
Nice. I like it. All right. All right. Let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Jets. So we've got a few different things we could talk about in this one. Where should we start? Let's start with apologies to Dallas Goedert, that's his new nickname after his previous nickname that was unfortunate last week. He definitely made us pay for that, finishing as the tight end 2 on the week. So how do you feel about Dallas Goedert now that he is coming off a strong week for once?
I mean, you don't love the performance to date, obviously, but just considering the current state, as always, of the tight end position, hard to sit him. Finishes the tight end 2 last week. Prior to that, hadn't cracked the top 12, so you just kind of hope that connection continues. I think at least the Jets have been susceptible enough across the middle. They might go back to the well for that matchup again here in week 6. How about the wide receivers? I'm not I think you just kind of start your AJ Browns, even Devonta Smith, who had kind of come down from earth a little bit after starting the season red hot. It's really been sort of the AJ Brown show so far. Are you cooling the Jets on Devonta Smith, or is he still a suitable flex play against this Jets defense?
Yeah, I think you put him probably more in the flex range, but he's definitely been quiet, right? Like the last few weeks, in the last 3 weeks, he is PPR wide receiver 52. So really, really quiet after the first 2 weeks of the season. So slight concerns that these games are going to come, but there's also going to be the big games for him too, right? And I don't necessarily feel that it's going to happen this week against the New York Jets. They have a pretty good coverage unit over there, so you probably, I think you're putting him in the flex, but you're not. I don't know. You don't love this matchup for him, but AJ Brown, I don't really have a problem with. I know he's probably going to see a lot of Sauce Gardner, but AJ Brown is still he's been too dominant to bench at this point. Where Smith has been a little bit concerning. I guess I do have some concerns. Are you concerned at all about Smith?
Yeah, just sort of tempering expectations, like you said, kind of consider him more of a flex play,
Mm-hmm.
other than, rather than relying on him as like a top tier wide receiver, which is unfortunate. That's what you drafted him for. But obviously, like the ceiling is so high. Don't love the matchup here. So like if you have solid options, I'm fine sitting Devonta Smith in this one, but you're always going to do it with the caveat that maybe he's about to go off, because it it's high octane offense is
Yeah.
hard to shut down on all cylinders at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And so okay, so here's the question: if you had to choose between Devontae Smith and Garrett Wilson this week, because Garrett Wilson is in this game,
Ooh.
he let us down again last week, which we were hoping that he'd have that big game. It wasn't great. It was fine. It wasn't like amazing, but I thought it would be a much better game against the Broncos, or was it? Yeah, Broncos. I can't remember. No, I don't know.
Yeah, something like
it
that.
was a good matchup. It was a good
Yeah.
matchup. He should have had a better game than what he did. So, can you trust Garrett Wilson this week?
I think you play him as a wide receiver too, and expect sort of like, wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 30 production from him. And that's, I think, what you're going to get most weeks. If you need a little bit of a safer play, I think Garrett Wilson, though his ceiling is a bit lower, I think he's a little bit less volatile on a week to week basis than Devonta Smith. So for me, that's sort of dependent on what your lineup needs specifically. If you just need like an option where you know what you're going to get, then I defer to Wilson. If you need, somebody that has weak winning potential, that's Devonta Smith for me. But I think I'd, generally speaking, prefer Wilson.
All right, fair enough. How about, okay, some positive out of the New York Jets offense here. Breece Hall fully
Ooh.
unleashed last week, dominates the touches, finishes as the RB3 overall. How are you feeling about Breece Hall after seeing that usage last week?
I mean, you're feeling amazingly well.
Yeah.
You love to see that. Tempering expectations for Breece Hall, even though he has been unleashed, of course. Like, I think what you do is you take week 5 and you say, okay, he's checked all the boxes. He looks healthy. Hit 21.5 miles per hour on his 72-yard touchdown in week 5. That's the 8th highest speed hit by any player at any position so far in the 2023 season. Like guns ablazing, speed for days, and you love to see that, especially for a guy coming off a torn ACL. But this week at matchup against the Eagles, I hate that matchup for him.
Yeah.
You can't sit him because literally it takes one missed forced tackle and he's gone.
Yeah.
So that's all he needs to do is force one missed tackle. But Eagles are the only team allowing fewer than 10 fantasy points to opposing running backs, like just over 3 yards per carry, had for the 6th fewest broken tackles allowed in the league. Like, not a great matchup in terms of upside, but again, you don't sit him because it's always one play. All it takes is one play from Breece Hall, and he's performed as an RB2 for the week, and and then some. So
Yeah.
tempering expectations, not excited, but excited for what at least that performance in week 5 showed us as to his health.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing, right? Is that he looked healthy. And like you said, he got up to, what was it, 21
21.5 miles per hour.
Yeah. So for my Canadian brothers and sisters listening, that's like 34 kilometers per hour.
Ooh.
So just under the speed limit in subdivisions, basically, is Brees Hall. So yeah, you love to see that he's healthy. He's getting the touches now. I am perfectly fine just dropping Dalvin Cook at this point. There's no real reason to hold him at this point other than a handcuff. But Brees Hall's looks so good that yeah, you're not going to be starting Dalvin Cook anyway. So very nice to see from Brees Hall. Anything else from this game that you want to touch on before we go on?
No, I think I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's go on then to the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Where do you want to start with this one? Because we got a few. Well, I don't know. They're nothing too crazy, but any specific area you want to start with these two teams?
No, you start David Montgomery, right? The
Yeah.
the
Oh my
RB1 for
God.
the Detroit Lions. I think the biggest question mark is how much do you trust Jared Goff on the road? Playing outdoors. He's been a very viable fantasy quarterback to this point in the season. Health is kind of the main concern. Any update on Amon-Ra St. Brown to this point and his
I
availability
saw that he
for?
was back at practice, so it sounds like he's on track to play this week. So feeling pretty good about that. At
Okay.
least for at least being able to stream Jared Goff. I don't know. I like Jared Goff this week. I think coming off of that game last week, he was the QB4 in week 5. I think this is a decent matchup against the Bucks. Again, looking at the kind of O-line D-line matchup of it all, from a clean pocket, Goff has earned a 92.3 passing grade, which ranks as the second best mark in the league. He's thrown for 7 touchdowns from a clean pocket, which is tied for third most. Like I said, potentially getting Amon-Ra St. Brown back this week, which helps to produce there for fantasy purposes. And then a 6.2% big time throw rate from a clean pocket, which is a top 5 mark among quarterbacks. So he's been really good. And yeah, like you said, the being on the road makes it a little bit more difficult for him. But I don't mind Jared Goff this week. I think I would consider him over like a Joe Burrow, at least for this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As long as Amon-Ra St. Brown is active, I think that's definitely a fair notion. The home road splits really, like, last year were kind of a huge problem for Jared Goff. He was really kind of unplayable when he was on the road. So that you like to see him bouncing back a little bit there. Still not practicing is Jahmyr Gibbs though, which might mean wheels up again for David Montgomery. Wheels have been up anyway. Jahmyr Gibbs dealing with a hamstring injury, missed week 5.
Yeah, it's not good. I don't know. This has definitely not been what we've wanted from Jahmyr Gibbs between usage and now obviously dealing with some health stuff there as well. So I think even if he is playing, you potentially could be sitting him this week. I don't think that, I think not practicing today probably means that even if he does play, he's not going to get a very good workload to work in there and deliver any kind of fantasy potential, especially considering how much they've leaned into David Montgomery. So not interested in Jahmyr Gibbs this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, even if he's active, I'll probably have him on my bench in most leagues unless I'm really, really hurting. Just even his workload when healthy has not been ideal, let alone his workload coming back from a hamstring injury, which we know they have a tendency to linger, have a tendency to get aggravated quite often. So keep an eye on the practice report. But either way, not looking to start Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think at least some continued assurance for David Montgomery managers that he is an RB1 play, I think, for the time being.
Yeah, this Lions offense, they love to run the ball as well, and they've been good at it. They got a great offensive line there to be able to do that. How about on the Bucs side, coming off of a bye week last week? Anybody stand out to you as far as like question marks or potential matchup plays here? Because the Lions defense has also been pretty good too.
Lions defense has been solid. And then another thing worth noting, Mike Evans, I feel like quietly not been practicing, also managing a hamstring injury, these nagging hamstring injuries.
Yeah.
it seems like there was a report here. Greg Auman, still no Mike Evans at the Bucks practice today. He tweeted out on Thursday afternoon, TBD on what that means for his availability, but not great to log like 2 back-to-back, days of missing practice. Obviously a little bit on the older side. It's not an ideal situation. I think, this might give Chris Godwin a little bit of bump based on volume if Mike Evans isn't good to go. But yeah, this Lions defense has much improved from what we saw in 2022. They're no longer a matchup necessarily to stream against. So, I'm starting Chris Godwin, but not really looking for much else. I'd prefer to look elsewhere, even for a guy like Rashad White. Just knowing that, Lions are actually kind of crushing it against the run right now, allowing the second fewest fantasy points to the position so far this season. So not loving that. Even held Bijan Robinson just to 8 total fantasy points.
Yeah.
He and Tyler Algier combined for just under 12 fantasy points. You don't love to see that. And this has been an offense that knows how to run the ball. So if they can't do it, I'm not trusting a guy like Rashad White and behind this offensive line to get that job done.
Yeah, well said. I'm with you. I feel there's a league I have a choice between Rashad White and Josh Downs, a dynasty league in my flex spot. I'm going to probably go with Josh Downs this week.
I think the ceiling's a little bit higher. I think that's fair.
I think so. All right. Anything else from Tampa Bay or Detroit?
No,
right.
I think I think again, this is kind of one of those matchups that we have a lot of answers for, surprisingly.
Yeah, it's been kind of nice. All right, let's go into prime time here, Sunday night football, and the New York Giants, of course, why not, against the Buffalo Bills. Daniel Jones, it seems like he's unlikely to play. He's dealing with a neck injury there. So Tyrod Taylor would potentially start. This is not an easy matchup against the Bills defense. You got Darren Waller also banged up. Saquon Barkley's coming off an injury. The Giants offense has been pretty ineffective recently. So is there anybody on New York that you're willing to put into your starting lineup this week?
I mean, I think you probably start Saquon Barkley, which weird to even have that much of a question mark there.
Yeah.
The Bills have been dealing with some injuries themselves on defense. Unfortunately lost Matt Milano just last week, lost starting defensive tackle. So like they're hurting on the other side of the ball, which, that could help the Giants just a little bit, but even the Bills down several key assets, probably better than a lot of just healthy defenses right now. So Saquon Barkley, I think you start him if you need a potential volume play. If Darren Waller is limited in this contest, maybe we see a bit more involvement from Saquon in terms of, his involvement as a receiver. But again, don't love that he's coming off of injury. I'm just kind of staying away from the New York Giants.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm kind of in the same boat there, where it's like you start Saquon if you have him, because you probably don't have a ton of better options there. But I don't know. I don't even know if I would be starting Darren Waller this week. It's always concerning when he's a little bit banged up in practice in the week ahead, and potentially, like you said, could be limited if he even plays. So it just becomes so much more risky with Darren Waller, given the injury history. So I think I would be leaning away from him as well, even in a weird tight end landscape, as always. So yeah. How about on the Buffalo side? Because we pretty much know, again, what this offense is. This is a pretty straightforward offense, but probably the only question mark is James Cook. So how do you feel about James Cook this week? Because he's coming off a 5 carry game for -4 yards last week. He split the goal to go snaps with Latavius Murray. He's had some fine games this season, but I do not love him as much that I have to start him every week, or I'm really looking to upgrade from James Cook if I can in fantasy lineups at this point.
If you can, if you can't, like I think he's an all right flex play here in week 6 specifically. Obviously, you don't love the decline in usage right out of the gate. saw 17 carries in week 2, was super productive on those
Mm-hmm.
carries, which you love. But since then has declined in rushing production each of those weeks since week 2. Again, you just don't love that. But, I think I believe in the talent for James Cook. I believe in the explosive nature of the offense. And I do think that this is going to be one of these matchups where, I don't know, the game in London, games in London are always a little screwy. And I think that that's probably also symptomatic of that. I think you're going to expect the Buffalo Bills to gain a nice, decent lead on these Giants, which should be conducive to the run game. And I'm fine playing James Cook, especially for that reason. But yeah, you're not going to be excited about it, but I think he's a fine flex play.
That's fair. That's fair. And yeah, as I try to contain myself from laughing at that London accent, I had Jace Abbey on the IDP preview last night for that episode, and he is from London and has a really good English accent. So this was
I
like
have to follow that up. Oh my
yeah, it was
gosh.
like it really felt like I was talking to him again with how well that accent came through here.
TBT.
Yeah. Anybody else worth talking about in this Sunday night football matchup for you?
No, let's head over to Monday Night Football for a matchup that I have no idea what to make of. Dallas Cowboys at Los Angeles Chargers on Monday night. What a weird game for the Dallas Cowboys coming off that outing against the 49ers. Obviously, one of the best defenses in the league is you can't expect a ton from any offense, but I think everybody had the expectations just a bit higher for these Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott coming off of one of the worst games of his career, but matchup against the Chargers, not a shabby one, right? Like Chargers rank 5th lowest PFF coverage grade. Could see maybe a CeeDee Lamb bounce back.
Yeah, I think I feel pretty good about a CeeDee Lamb bounce back. Yeah, I don't know. The Chargers defense, like, it's not terrible in any way, right? Like, but they're definitely not the 49ers, right? So that part of it has you optimistic about what the Cowboys can do on offense. So I have no problem starting CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, Tony Pollard for sure against the Chargers and their run defense. But I think somebody that's kind of interesting as well is Jake Ferguson. So for at tight end, right? So just 60% route participation on the year, but like Peyton Hendershot also now on IR, right? That literally just happened today, but 25% target rate leads all Dallas receiving options who have run at least 25 routes. CeeDee Lamb at 22%. So I know he doesn't have the volume that CeeDee Lamb does as far as routes, but Jake Ferguson is getting targeted at a higher rate when he's on the field. The one area that I do like for this Cowboys passing offense is the Chargers are allowing 8.34 yards per pass attempt, which is the 3rd worst mark in the league. So there's potential here, I guess, for this Dallas offense to get back on track. Last week was concerning enough that I'm not overly excited about it, but I kind of like Jake Ferguson this week.
Yeah, I like Jake Ferguson, tight end 13 in fantasy points per game for fantasy so far this year, and that includes some down weeks. I think this is an interesting matchup. Like you said, the Chargers not the scariest of defenses, so yeah, you're not necessarily concerned about that. This game does have the highest point total of the week at 50.5 points on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think there should be scoring potential in this outing. Which again should be conducive to a decent amount of hopefully passing for our Jake Ferguson shares. But yeah, it's very clear that Dak Prescott, when Jake Ferguson is on the field, he's inclined to target him, and I think that's probably going to continue as the weeks go on. I think. Yeah, you start Jake Ferguson, you start CeeDee Lamb. I'm still fine starting Tony Pollard, even though he's been disappointing as of late. Not a ton of questions here for me. I think this could be a really nice bounce back week for CeeDee Lamb, just against that Chargers secondary. On the other side of the ball, we have Austin Eckler making his return from that ankle injury that's been nagging. What do we expect from Austin Eckler here in his return? And, what version of the Dallas Cowboys defense do we see? I think that's maybe the biggest question.
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest question. I am still concerned about facing the Dallas defense. I do think they're still a very good defense. Definitely dealing with more injuries now, though. We know obviously Trayvon Diggs is out, but they also lost Leighton Vander Esch, their top linebacker, last week as well. So potentially some holes to kind of take advantage of there, especially for somebody like an Austin Eckler. I feel like he's had long enough to heal from that ankle, basically, that hopefully he comes back this week and he doesn't have any kind of limitations. But yeah, this should be a decent, I think I'm not sitting Austin Eckler, basically, is what I'm saying. He's going in my lineup. I know it's against the Cowboys defense, but it just feels like it's been a while now that he's had to kind of heal up, and they're coming off the bye week as well. So there was always the potential that if they had a game last week, he could have played. So this should be, I would think, a full workload for Austin Eckler. At least I hope so, and hope I'm not wrong on that one, because yeah, I'll be starting him pretty much anywhere that I have him.
Yeah, and then at quarterback, you're obviously starting Justin Herbert. You're starting, Keenan Allen. Again, not the best matchup against this Cowboys defense, but they are managing some injuries, which should help the Chargers move the ball perhaps a bit more efficiently than they might otherwise. Yeah, maybe this is, again, one of those matchups that are kind of fairly straightforward.
I think so, yeah. I'm starting Keenan Allen. Yeah, even though, again, a good coverage defense. I think probably the only player that I'm maybe I have questions of or I'm avoiding is Josh Palmer. He just hasn't had a lot of success against man coverage, and the Cowboys definitely love to deploy man coverage, and they're really good at it. So he ranks 40th in fantasy points per route run against man, 58.6 receiving grade against man. That ranks 69th in the league. So don't love Josh Palmer this week. If I had to pick somebody to completely avoid from this Chargers offense, it's probably Palmer.
Yeah, very, very fair. You're definitely not playing Quentin Johnston either.
Yeah,
I think Keenan Allen's like the one guy that you can really count on. And, even then might not be the most efficient version of himself. You might be sort of counting on him more as a volume play, but obviously, he's Justin Herbert's go-to guy.
For sure. All right. Well, that is going to do it for another weekly preview episode. Thank you all for tuning in. A big thank you to Kate for knocking out another one of these big episodes with me. Hey, but an hour and a half, that's not bad. We're cutting down on the time as we get into the flow of things here. We have less questions as we go game to game. So cutting down on the time as well, which helps. But thank you, Kate, for coming on here and crushing it as usual. And before you go, please let everybody know what you have up on pff.com this week.
Yeah, I got the week 5 rushes and touches report outlining some of the biggest takeaways from running backs in week 5 and what they mean moving forward for your fantasy teams. Panic or Antic report. And then tomorrow have coming up Friday, the in case of emergency flex plays. So check them out.
I like it. And then as for me, I have the IDP fantasy report that's out now. IDP rankings, wide receiver man zone coverage report. It should be up. I know it was delayed getting up there, but it should be up by the time this episode drops. And then O-line, D-line matchups to target and avoid coming out on Friday. So be sure to check all that out. We appreciate you all for listening. Thank you for tuning in. If you're on the YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. It helps us a big deal as well. But yeah, appreciate you all. Good luck in week 6. And until next time, peace out.